You have loved all the others, so today I'm sharing even more. One of my favorite things to do is to take a box cake mix, change it up a little bit or a lot, and take it to a whole new level. Hey y'all, I'm Valerie, and welcome to my kitchen. In today's video, I'm sharing 5 new recipes using box cake mix. And I'm telling you, some of these are gonna blow your mind. Okay y'all, let's get started. These red velvet Oreo truffle brownies were amazing. And with a name like that, how could they not be? In a large bowl, I'm adding 1 box of red velvet cake mix. The recipe did call for an 18.25 ounce box. I haven't seen one that size, but this one was 15.25 ounces and it worked out just fine. To that cake mix, I added 1 stick of melted butter and 2 eggs. And then you're just gonna mix this until it's well combined. This is gonna be the bottom layer and it's gonna be a little thicker, kinda more like a cookie dough. I'm using a 9x13 pan for this. I have aligned this thing with foil and parchment paper, and I greased it with some Crisco. I did not want these things to stick, and it'll make it a whole lot easier for me to lift out when they're done. You're just gonna pour that batter right on in, and I find it easier to use my offset spatula to spread it out. By the way, you could also use a chocolate cake mix for this, and that would be just fine. Now these are gonna go into the oven to bake at 350, anywhere from 15 to 18 minutes, or until they're just set. You just do not want to overbake these. While that's in the oven, I'm going to work on the second layer. You'll need some Oreos, 36 to be exact, and that wasn't quite this full family size package, so you could probably get away with the regular package. And I had to show you this. I got a double decker here, or I guess you could call it a triple decker. I don't know what you call it. I guess a double. Anyways, I blended these in my food processor until they were very fine crumbs. And there's no sense in getting another bowl, so I just did it all right here, and I added 1 stick of melted butter. You're gonna stir this until it kind of starts looking like wet sand. Okay, and our red velvet cookie layer should be about ready to come out of the oven. Here it is, it's done, but I made sure not to overbake it. Now, I started out by trying to sprinkle this on, because I knew I was going to have to spread it out and cover that entire cake or cookie dough layer. But I just ended up dumping it all in. It was a lot easier to spread out than I thought it was going to be. I did gently spread it out first though, and then I pressed it down. And by the way, if you're enjoying this video, I would really appreciate it if you would give me a thumbs up. It really helps out my channel, and it also helps me to know you want to see more videos like this. So I really wanted to make sure I got this pressed down good, that way the brownies didn't fall apart. So I just placed over some plastic wrap and used that to press it down, and then it come right off. And I ended up wrapping it around my hand to make sure I got it pressed down all the way to the edge. That pan was still very hot, so just be careful as you push it over to the side. I've got an 11-ounce package of milk chocolate chips here. I added those to a medium-sized bowl. And over on the stovetop, I brought 1 cup of heavy cream to a low boil. Now I'm just pouring them right on top of those chocolate chips. I'm just going to let them sit here for a minute to melt. I did make sure I pressed them down, that way they were completely covered. This is going to be the top layer, and it's a ganache, and oh yes, it is so good. I let mine sit for about 5 minutes, and that was enough time to where my chocolate chips completely melted. And it does help to get you a whisk to make sure it's well combined. Now I'm just going to pour on this ganache, spread it out evenly, and completely cover everything. And I tried to be careful here, that way I didn't get those Oreo crumbs mixed into the ganache. Okay, and we can't just leave them like this. The recipe said to sprinkle over 1 12-ounce bag of mini chocolate chips. I also had just a little bit of cream cheese chips left over from another recipe, so I thought that would add a little something extra to the top of this. You could also add on some colored M&Ms and kind of change it up for the holidays. I did have some Easter ones, I should have added those, but these cream cheese chips went perfect with the red velvet cookie dough layer. If you want, you could even add on some sprinkles. Just make it your own. Now this goes into the refrigerator to chill for about 45 minutes until that ganache is completely set. Then you can cut them into squares and serve. These are so delicious. They're rich, they're chocolatey, and probably one of my new favorite desserts. I love how you can see the different layers in here. These would be perfect to make for the holidays, especially Christmas. Or you can make them and just have them all to yourself. And I have to say, sorry Daddy. Y'all, if you're new here, my dad lives in front of me. I always send him a sample of everything, and these didn't make it up the hill there. I'm so glad I tried this pineapple juice cake. I did change it up a little bit though, but I'll have the full recipe typed out in the description box below. I'm starting out by adding 1 box of yellow cake mix to a large bowl, and just make sure it's the 15.5 ounce box. You won't be able to use Betty Crocker for this recipe because they've reduced theirs to 13.25 ounces. You're also going to add in 1 small box of vanilla instant pudding. Next, you're going to add in 4 eggs. And I need to give a big shout out to my Aunt Darla, who saved the day and swung by the store and grabbed me this huge can of pineapple juice. You can't really make a pineapple juice cake without pineapple juice, but right now I'm only adding in 3/4 of a cup. Also 3/4 cup of vegetable oil. Now I'm adding in 1 cup of sour cream. And don't worry, it's not going to taste like sour cream, but it's going to make it taste more like it came from a bakery. Now you're just going to mix this until it's very well combined. You're going to need a bundt pan for this, and mine's a Wilton 9.5 inch. I did grease it very well, and I sprayed it with Baker's Joy non-stick spray. This is like the best non-stick spray ever. Now you're just going to pour in that batter, and it smells so good, by the way. Okay, I gotta know, who all here likes to lick the bowl? I gotta tell you though, it's almost impossible to do when you got kids around. My daughter and my niece always fight over that spatula, and I purposely dirty up too, just to be fair. I'm just kind of wiggling that around in there just to get it even, but it does not have to be perfect. Now this goes into the oven to bake at 325 for about 35 minutes, or until a toothpick inserted comes out clean. You'll also notice that the cake will start pulling away from the sides just a little bit. Now we're going to head over to the stove top to make up a sauce to pour over this cake. In a medium-sized saucepan, I added 4 tablespoons of butter. I let that melt down. Then I added in 1/2 cup of pineapple juice and 2 cups of powdered sugar. You're going to cook this over medium-low heat. Whisk it constantly until everything is well combined. And you don't have to bring it to a boil or anything. You just want to make sure that sugar is completely dissolved. I'm removing it from the heat and heading back over to the counter. Okay, I know this seems like a lot. Oh, and before you pour it in, we're going to make sure we poke holes all in the top of that cake. I'm using a wooden skewer. You just want to make sure the holes are kind of tiny. You can do a lot of them, but just make sure they're tiny. I don't think the end of a wooden spoon would work. You could also use a toothpick if you had to, or a kebab skewer. Now I'm spooning this pineapple butter sauce all on the top of that cake. And I am doing it kind of slow, just to make sure all that went down into the cake instead of over the sides. Okay if it goes over the sides, but you just want the majority inside that cake. I waited about 20 minutes until that cake was cool, and most of that glaze was soaked in. Before I flip this over, I did run a small knife down into the inside and the outside there because I was a little nervous about this coming out. It looks like I was struggling a little bit there to get that pan off, but once I got it off, this cake came out perfect. Now, if you want, you can make up a glaze, even sprinkle over some powdered sugar, but I left it just like it was. Wouldn't change a thing. This cake was absolutely delicious. Now I gotta tell you, this cake was not dry at all, but it wasn't soggy either. It didn't have an overpowering pineapple flavor, but to me it was just right. They do make a Duncan Hines Pineapple Supreme cake mix, so if you wanted a stronger pineapple flavor, that would be perfect. Oh, and my daddy did get a sample of this cake, and he gave it a 10 out of 10. This was so easy to make, and I'll definitely be making it again. This Mounds Cake is a new family favorite. I got this recipe from Come Sit at My Table. They share some delicious recipes, and I'll be sure to link their video below. You'll need 1 box of chocolate cake mix. I'm using the dark chocolate fudge. I'm kind of following the directions on the back of the box, but instead of using water, I'm using milk. Instead of 3 eggs, I'm adding 4, and instead of oil, I'm adding melted butter. I'm telling you, you do this to any cake mix, and it'll take it to a whole nother level. Now you're going to mix this until it's well combined. And while I'm thinking about it, if you're new, I would really love to have you here. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. That way you get notified of all my future videos. I am making this in a 9x13 baking dish. Mine is pretty large here, thank goodness. I'll tell you about that in a minute. I did spray it with nonstick spray because I did not want this cake to stick. Now pour in that cake batter and spread it out evenly. You're going to bake this cake according to the directions on the back of the box. I did give it a little tap to get some of those air bubbles out. That way it baked up a little more evenly. And I'm going to be honest, when this cake came out of the oven, I was like, how in the world am I going to get a coconut layer and a chocolate layer on the top of this cake? I just went with it, trust the process. And after that cake was completely cooled, I started on the coconut layer. In a large saucepan, I added 3/4 cup of milk, 3/4 cup of sugar, and 6 ounces of mini marshmallows. I let this cook over medium-low heat. Just keep on stirring until that sugar was completely dissolved and those marshmallows were completely melted. And while that's happening, in a microwave-safe bowl, I melted down 1 stick of butter and 12 ounces of semi-sweet chocolate chips. Just microwave it in 30-second intervals until it's completely melted. Now to that marshmallow mixture in the pan there, I'm adding a 14-ounce bag of sweetened coconut. Then just break it up and stir it. It'll be thick. You just want to make sure it's all mixed together. Now I'm removing it from the heat and heading over to the counter. You're going to take that coconut mixture and immediately spread it over the whole top of that cake. Make sure you cover everything. And I'm sitting here thinking, if you're more of an almond joy kind of person, over the top of that coconut layer, you could add on some chopped up almonds. I can pretty much bet that will be delicious. Now, this wasn't the easiest thing to spread out here, so I had to switch to my offset spatula. Well, this is the one I grabbed because the other one was dirty. I'm not really sure what you call this one, but it does come in handy for so many different things. Okay, since this baking dish was completely full and I didn't want that chocolate to run all over the sides, I did let that chocolate cool off a little just to thicken up a bit. That way it stayed on top of that cake and not all over the counter. And don't worry y'all, I made sure I got every last drop of that chocolate out of that bowl there. I'm just spreading it out to cover everything. But you don't want to let it cool off too much, because then you won't be able to spread it out. Now I'm going to show you what I was talking about when I said this baking dish was completely full. I'm telling you, it was over the top. But as long as you let that chocolate cool off just a little bit before you spread it on, I'm pretty sure everything's going to stay on there. And y'all, just looking at this makes me want to run make it again. Oh, and I still have so many box cake mix recipes that I really want to try. So y'all have to let me know in the comments below. If y'all want to see more, I will keep them coming. And this recipe was suggested to me by my daddy, so y'all have to thank him for this one. He's my #1 recipe finder, and let me tell you, he finds some really good ones. I just had to go back in my text messages and see exactly what he said about this one, and he had said it was off the chain delicious. And he was exactly right. This is definitely a dessert we'll be making again and again. These banana pudding blondies are gonna blow your mind. In a large bowl, I added a 15.25 ounce box of French vanilla cake mix. And if you don't have vanilla, you can always use yellow. It'll work out just fine. I'm also adding in 1 stick of melted butter and 1 egg. Now give it a really good mix. And I got to thinking, this would be really good with some banana extract. And I actually happen to have some on hand, so I added that in. And I'm going to show you a little trick here. I don't remove that seal, but I poke a tiny hole in the top. That way I can just squeeze it in, because when I try to pour it, it just goes all over the side of that bottle. Okay, this is all mixed together. It's nice and thick like a cookie dough. Now we're going to press it in a 9x13 baking dish. You're just going to pour it right in. This batter is very, very thick and crumbly. I just tried to break it up and spread it out. And then I decided to use a trick I had gotten from one of you. I just grabbed that bag from the cake mix, stuck my hand inside, and then just used that to spread it out. You're able to press everything down and nothing sticks to it. Genius. So thank you for that. After you get it all pressed out into one big even layer, you're going to set that to the side so we can start on the filling. In a very large bowl, I added 8 ounces of softened cream cheese, 1 3/4 cup of powdered sugar, 1 stick of melted butter, and a little bit more of banana extract. I'd say I did half a teaspoon in the crust and half a teaspoon in the filling. If you don't have banana extract or can't find it, you can always use vanilla or you can leave it out altogether. After I got that all mixed together, I added in a small box of banana cream instant pudding. Now you're going to give it all another really good mix. Now I'm adding in 3 eggs, and I'm going to give it one last really good mix. I probably could have added everything at the same time and then mixed it all together, but doing it this way got that filling nice and smooth. Now for the last ingredient, well, almost the last ingredient, I'm going to fold in 1 cup of very ripe mashed bananas. Okay, I got it all mixed together. Now it's time to pour it on the top of that crust. Y'all, I've had this recipe printed out for a while now, and I am so glad I finally tried it. Any recipe that has anything to do with banana pudding has got to be delicious. And I can't wait to experiment with this and try out some new and different flavors. Okay, after you get that all spread out, we're going to top it with some vanilla wafers. And you can really add on however many you like here. I just tried to do them where, after I cut them into squares, there would be a vanilla wafer on the top of each little blondie there. Now, I was so worried about those vanilla wafers burning, so I did place a piece of foil over the top for the first like 10 or 15 minutes maybe. But they baked in the oven at 350 for about 45 minutes. And really, I don't think the foil is completely necessary. I think they'll turn out just fine. I was so worried that I had burnt the bottom of these, but I did not, thank goodness. That bottom was slightly crunchy like a cookie. That filling was delicious. And that banana flavor was amazing. You are going to love this tornado cake. I'm starting out in a large bowl. I added in 1 butter golden cake mix, but you can also use yellow. Just please make sure you use the 15.25 ounce The smaller one will not work for this recipe. I just added that into the bowl, and by the way, we're not following the directions on the back of the box. Next, you're going to add in 3 eggs, half a cup of oil, and 3/4 cup of evaporated milk. There's a total of 1.5 cups in this can, so I'll be using half in the cake here and half in the topping. Now I'm adding in 1 can, a 20-ounce can of crushed pineapple, juice and all. Now give this a really good mix. This is what it should look like. It's a pretty runny consistency. I'm using a 9x13 baking dish for this. The recipe says to grease this pan with 1 tablespoon of butter, so I melted it down and poured it in, and then used my little spatula or my little silicone brush here to spread it out all over the bottom and all over the sides. We just don't want this thing to stick. Now you're going to pour in that batter. Now this goes into the oven to bake at 350 for about 40 minutes, or until a toothpick inserted comes out completely clean. While that's in the oven, I'm going to go ahead and work on the topping. In a large saucepan, I added 3/4 cup of evaporated milk, that was the other half of that can, and 2 egg yolks, just the yellow. And whisk that until it's all mixed together. Next, add in 1 cup of sugar and 6 tablespoons of butter, and a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Now just cook this over medium heat until that butter melts and that mixture comes to a gentle boil. Now you're going to let this simmer and whisk it constantly until that mixture thickens. That took about 5 minutes. Then I added in 1 cup of sweetened coconut and 1 cup of chopped pecans. Stir that until it's all mixed together. Then you're going to remove it from the heat and head back over to the counter. Okay, here's the cake out of the oven, but before we add on the topping, we're going to poke holes all in the top of that cake. And I'm just using the end of my mixer attachment. Now pour on that topping, and you'll want to do this while it's still warm, and you just want to make sure you spread it out to cover the whole top of that cake. I could very seriously just eat this topping with a spoon. It is that good. I let this cake cool for just a little bit before I couldn't wait any longer and I just had to dig in. This has 3 of my favorite things in here: pineapple, pecans, and coconut. It was out of this world good. And if you make this one, which I really hope you do give it a try, this will not last long. Well, it didn't last long here. We devoured it, and I'm pretty sure it's a brand new family favorite. I really hope you enjoyed this video. You may also like these. Don't forget to subscribe down below for more easy recipes, and I will see you in the next one.